It's interesting thinking about your question between Ngozi and Chimamanda. And, often when you have children, many children, and you're asked, who is your favorite? You have to say, I love all of them equally. Even though we know that many parents have favorites, right? But they have to kind of pretend. So I'm going to say I love both names, but that's not actually true. The real reason is Chimamanda is a name that I gave myself. And the story is a little bit long, but maybe I should tell it so that the students can hear it, yes? Okay. So when I was born in 1977, the names that were my birth certificate were Ngozi, Grace. Grace was my mother's name. And so as I got older, I always felt that Grace was my mother, not me. I think Grace is a very beautiful name, but it never felt like my name. And so I was Ngozi. But even then as a child, I felt that Ngozi, while also a beautiful name, was very common. I felt that 1 in 2 Igbo girls were named Ngozi. And I always felt that I needed something else that felt uniquely mine. And so then at my confirmation, I was reading a novel at the time, and the character in the novel was called Amanda. So I decided that this name was wonderful and I was going to be called Amanda. There were a few arguments with the hierarchy of the church concerning such things as that you must have a saint's name. So I made my case and I was allowed to have Amanda. And I remember the bishop looked a bit surprised when he saw my name when he was doing and then he said, Amanda, be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit. And I wanted to say, it's not Amanda, it's Amanda. But anyway, so then I was Amanda, and then I went to the US to go to school. And I noticed very quickly that there were many other Americans in my class called Amanda. But the worst part was how they pronounced the name. Amanda? And so one day someone was referring to me and I did not know. Because they were saying Amanda, and I didn't turn because I didn't realize it was me. And I think that it was that, but also during that period I had started to think about identity and what it means to be from where, to kind of own where you come from. And so I remember sitting in that class in the US and suddenly I thought, this name is not my name. This name belongs to other people, it's not mine. I'm not Amanda. And that's when I started thinking about how I could give myself a name that was an Igbo name, that had a real meaning, but also that had to have that word Amanda, because that word was already in my passport and my license and everything. And honestly, it came as a revelation. I remember exactly where I was, and that name Chimamanda came to me. And in Igbo, it means my God will never fall down. And so I just really felt that this was the name that I was given, I gave it to myself, but I was also given the name.
Dream count. What triggered that inspiration? Or are there multiple triggers of dream count?
Yes, there are multiple triggers. And I want to say thank you again to the brilliant young women for their performance. I'm not sure everybody quite got it, but what they did was in a lot of what they said, they found very clever ways to weave in titles of my novels and my short stories. And it just really was very cleverly done. So thank you again. And I also love how they kept, the expression dream counting kept recurring. And it's difficult for me to talk about a single inspiration because I always have multiple inspirations. As a storyteller, I'm always watching the world. I'm always watching. I'm always very alert to the big things, but also to the small things. I have a notebook. Actually, now it's my phone. I used to have a notebook. But I'm always writing things. So I'm watching, I notice something. It can be the color of your shoes, which are very cool, by the way. And then I would make a note. And maybe in a novel in 10 years' time, there's going to be somebody wearing shoes like that. So it came from many, many things, but really I wanted to write about, and the students referred to this idea of dreaming and who gets to dream and who thinks that their dream will count and who thinks that their dreams will not count. And what does it even mean to dream? I'm very interested in, and for me, I understand dream in a very expansive way. I don't just mean, you lie, you sleep and you dream. No. I mean the hopes we have for ourselves, what we think that we deserve, what we aspire to, all of those things. So, but most of all, I think I wanted to write about women. I wanted to write about women's lives. I think this is the first novel that is very focused on women's lives. I mean, all my other books have been, I think about both men and women. But this is the book that I really wanted to write about contemporary women's lives in a very honest way.
And Adichie has said that he saw in you a young writer with the skill of ancient storytellers. And in your encounter with Adichie, you also acknowledged that you revered and could even have the courage to look at him face to face. Now the work is out. What do you think critics should be saying about Dream Count?
Well, I think I should start by saying that may the soul of the critic, Professor Nolim, rest in peace. And also I want to say that he was completely wrong about Chinua Achebe. But at the same time, I think his reading of Achebe, while I disagree very strongly with it, should exist. So I really believe in multiple perspectives. I think the relationship between a writer and a critic should be one of mutually ignoring each other. I think, because really I think looking at literature creatively and looking at literature as a critic are two very different things. But I think that they're important, both are important. And I, of course, look at literature as a creative person. And so, when I was in secondary school, I didn't always enjoy my literature classes because I felt that they were almost too technical, too much about the theme, but I wanted to talk about the characters. There's this idea that of literature being, really a way for us to gossip, but to gossip with the most elevated language. There is something deeply gossipy about the best literature. And I think that critics don't seem to recognize this, and I quarrel with that. So I think that I don't think about critics, honestly. I respect that critics exist. I respect the work that they do because they bring very valuable insight to literary works, but I don't actively think about them, and I don't think creative people should, because often you can start to change your own artistic vision because you're thinking that Nolim is going to say I did not do something right. So let me change this now from my grandmother's story. Even though actually the story that is calling you is your grandmother's story. I think Chinua Achebe did something remarkable with just that novel, Things Fall Apart. I mean, he changed the world.
That's right.
And we cannot, it's something that there's no way that you can reduce that. It's what it is. And so I don't know what the critics, I mean, I know the book has been reviewed widely. I'm told that the reviews have been very good. I don't read reviews. But, critics, I respect them, but I will always face my front.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a woman. She's a wife. She's a writer. Is a public figure. And above all, you have to be the mother that you are. And some of these young girls will be wondering, how are you combining all of these roles? How are you juggling them? And how is it that you're able to get to where you are with all these multiple roles that you have to play? And I'm sure they would like to know how you do it so that now that you have inspired them and they look up to you like a model, can you share your secrets with them before we allow them to join the conversation?
Almost an itigidi man. He mentioned wife before mother. You see the problem. Please, can you mention mother first?
It's the wife that makes you a mother.
Okay, I think you won that argument. I think if I have anything to say to young women, obviously I have many things to say, but in this particular case about having different roles, it is to say to them, you can. But the other thing is, you might not be able to do all of them as perfectly as you want, but that's okay. Part of being a mother, which I think for me has been the greatest gift I've been given, is that sometimes you feel guilty. Sometimes you feel that you want to be there 24 hours a day for your child, but you can't. And in fact, it might not be a good thing for your child. I think it's a good thing for your child to see you doing things in the world. You inspire your child by going out and doing things, whatever it is. From the woman who sells pepper to the woman who's running for president, that child is inspired by seeing the mother. I know how much it meant to me to see my mother, who was a wonderful mother. You know, my mother was a fantastic mother, but she was also a woman with her own ambitions. And so she became the first registrar of the University of Nigeria. But I never felt for one day that my mother was not there for me. And so we can do it all. What I want to encourage you though, in particular, is whatever it is you want to do it well. Don't put in any half-baked effort. If you're going to have children, put in everything. If you're going to pursue, you need to put in everything. So what I try to do, I'm going to leave out wife for now. Because these Cross River people, I think they need to add money to the bride price. So but you know, my writing, you know, when I was younger, I didn't actually dream about things like getting married. Honestly, I had friends who would say, my wedding dress. I never thought about the wedding dress. I just wasn't interested. I read books, and that's what I loved doing. And I had arguments. I was very good at arguing about everything. And I encourage you, by the way, especially young women, speak up. Speak up. But always speak up from a place of knowledge. So before I have opinions about almost everything in this world, but before I air them, I go and do my homework. So if you ask me what I think about something and I don't know about it, I won't tell you anything, but I'll go back and read. I'll go back and learn. And so, you know, often I find that in public spaces, men generally are more confident about speaking up. Women are generally more, you know, apologetic. Don't be. Speak up. And all of these rules, you can do it. You don't have to be perfect. You know, you can be a mother as long as you love your child with your whole heart. That's it. Because love will propel you. Your love will propel you to do what you need to do for your child. And it's so important, I think, for a woman to have what she does, for a woman to have her own. And it's not just about, you know, have money in your pocket so that he's not giving you money for, no. I mean, just a sense of self-fulfillment. Have something that you do. It doesn't matter what it is. And do it well. So I really think it's very doable. And as for the wife, you know, just manage your husband.
I hope you're not managing us.
The one thing I want to say about a husband is it's really important who you choose. It's really important who you choose. Young women choose wisely. Sometimes as young women you can tell that the person you're with is not really a good person, but you're desperate to get married. You're desperate to have somebody who's your partner. Don't settle. Be very careful who you choose. The person you choose as your life partner will make a huge difference in your life. If you choose somebody who's kind, somebody who's supportive, it will make all of the difference. And so I can tell you that I chose well. So
yes. We are good people. Okay.
You can try, if you're looking, go to Itigidi. There's some good men left there.
Thank you. So please apply through me. I will give you.
So I'm going to, very quickly, my advice for an upcoming writer, and I'm assuming that you are one, right, is to write. Write. Keep writing. You know, sometimes people will talk about how they want to write, but they're thinking about all of the problems and all of the challenges they have. Write. And I think if you're really committed to writing, you have to make the time. When I was in college, when I was in university in the US, I was you know, full-time student. I was also taking care of my nephew, which was also a full-time job. But I made the time to write. So sometimes, you know, I would cook, put him to bed, and then I would do my school work, you know, write a paper, whatever. And then I always would add an hour or two. So often I would go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning because I was determined to make time to write every day. So often it meant I didn't have as much of a social life, but I wasn't really interested because what mattered to me was the writing. So I think that if you consider yourself an upcoming writer, you have to really make writing matter. And it means that you have to be willing to sacrifice something for the writing. And write, you know, write every day. Sometimes it won't be good. It doesn't have to be good every day. Write. And to the young man who made the big mistake of calling Nsukka a village, we're coming after you. But you know, I appreciate your question because I think it's And the simple answer to your question is yes, that of course I think it's important to remember that everyone who's achieved something had some obstacle. If they didn't, then they're lying. But the question I want to ask you is your dream a specific dream? You said, I want to be great. But is it, I want to be great at? Or is it just, I want to be great? Because it makes a difference. If it's a specific dream, I really respect that, and I urge you to, yes, Nigeria is hard. Nigeria has always been hard. But people have managed to push back. And push back. If so, you have a specific dream, do your best, do your homework. I really believe in homework. So software engineering, which I don't know very much about, obviously, but I'm sure that there are courses online that will elevate you. I'm sure that there are things that you can, so instead of maybe going to a Burna Boy concert, take that money and do a course online that's going to put you in a higher level, so that if you decide to apply for graduate school, for example, just that you have that in your resume might be the thing that pushes you over. Just do more, take 4 more steps forward. Nigeria is hard, I know that, we all know that, but I think maybe it's time for us to say, don't stop the sentence that Nigeria is hard. Continue with but. Nigeria is hard. Do a comma, not a full stop. But I will do it. It's really important because I think it's also important for us to remember there's so much. Every time I'm home, I'm just moved by the innovation, the energy in this country, the intelligence, the talent. Right? It's up to us to do the most that we can. It's unfortunate that this is what we got. We didn't, none of us signed up for a country like Nigeria, right? We all want Nigeria to be better. It's not, right? Things are terrible. Like, people are hungry, but don't let that be the thing that holds you back. I want in 10, 20 years to see your name somewhere as the leading software engineers doing something. I'm serious. So let's break away from the sedate Catholic mode and be a big Pentecostal. So manifest it. And the other question, sister's question, which amused me because it almost felt as though sister was warning me a little. And I think sister was saying, really, sister's question is, but don't you think that you're encouraging other women to use rat poison? And why not something? And well, I think the first thing I will say is it was the character, not me. Let's remember that. But how I read that character, and I think that multiple readings are valid, but how I read that character is that her act was an act of resistance, but it wasn't really for her, it was for her children. That act was a violent act, it was an extreme act, but it was also an act of a woman who had been beaten down to the most abject submission, and who did not want her children to live in the shadow of what her life was. I don't think Beatrice is ever going to be a full human being, but she wanted differently for her children. And when you ask, shouldn't I have thought about what other options did she have? I think it's easy when we talk about women who are in terribly abusive relationships, when we say, why don't they just leave? But the psychology of abuse is very different. It's very difficult for women who have been in relationships that are so unhealthy to just get up and leave. They don't even have, many of them don't even have, they're not able to psychologically. So I think Beatrice is a character who would never have been able to get up and pack her things and tell her children we're leaving. Not in the shadow of a man just as impressive, in many ways as Eugene. So I think that she did what she thought she could. I'm not encouraging rat poison, no. Unless the situation is very bad. No, please, it's a joke. All of you young people, please do not put on social media. Like Chimamanda said, you should kill your husbands with rat poison. Please, it was a joke. I don't think a lot of women would get up and tell me, well, what about your there's an entitlement to space that men have that puzzles me to no end, and women don't have it. And I think that men should come towards the center a little bit, let go of that fragility. Everything is not about you. And women, maybe learn honestly, because a lot of the questions I get, first of all, you cannot know me and say that I don't talk about my father. So you need to watch more things. My father, anybody who knows me well and has read me knows how much my father meant to me. My father, I was a complete and utter daddy's girl. And also in that interview, if you remember, I said that one of the major feelings that I've left with in my grieving process, which is ongoing, is that I think I took my mother for granted, and I have deep regrets about that. I was so busy being a daddy's girl and adoring the ground that my father walked on, that I just thought my mother was just there forever. And so I've talked about how it's important for young women to really nurture and cherish and nourish the relationship with your mothers. It's very, mother-daughter relationships can be very thorny. You're going to regret it if you don't make sure that pay attention to it now. If you have your mother, pay attention to it now. Make the most of it. And so, to the question, yes, I was inspired by my mother and my grandmother, as I should be, and I'm sure you were inspired by your father and your grandfather. No, honestly, I think this is why I say that feminism is a justice movement, that we have to get to a point where it becomes ordinary to think that both women and men are at the center of the world, not just men. Because if we think like that, there's certain questions that will not happen, because it will be ordinary, right? This question about what is the role of the father in a feminist household, the role of the father is the role of the father. I think that parents, a father and a mother raise a child, and it really depends. It's always about context. The story I told about my mother, which is that my mother was the first woman to be registrar, and at her first meeting, the sign said chairman, because it had been men who had occupied that position until she did. And so somebody wanted to change it and put chairperson. My mother said, no, leave chairman. And when she told me this story, which inspired me greatly, her point was, I didn't want them to think that I was doing anything differently from what the other people had done. Because sometimes if you change the label, people think that even the content has changed, and she did not want that. And when you're the first, women who are firsts in different positions know that in some ways you have a double burden. People are looking at you and waiting for you to prove yourself, especially as a woman. So my mother did not want to start out with anybody, even anybody at all, even the person serving them meat pie, to think that somehow because a woman was doing the job, it was now a different job. But that's about context, because in many other contexts, women would not want to be called chairman.
Sorry.
Okay, yes. I think that Dream Count is a novel that I hope will make people remember their dreams. So we all dream. Women, men, we all dream. And sometimes we put our dreams in our pockets because we don't think that they will come true. And I think it's important to just keep dreaming. And so I hope that this novel inspires everyone, but of course particularly, as you've asked, women who want to run for office. It's a very difficult thing to take on in a country that doesn't have many examples, many successful examples to look up to. But I think just being reminded that as a human being you dream, right? And it's worth holding on to that dream. It's worth trying, because you never know. It's not just the country, it's the world that has lost a lot from women being excluded. When you think about it, there are women, men and women are granted intelligence. So we cannot say that men are somehow automatically more intelligent than women. So when you think about all the intelligent women throughout history who have not been allowed to participate, who were not allowed to go to school, who were sent up to get married instead of getting educated, you realize that we have lost a lot, because who knows? Who knows if perhaps today we might have cured all different kinds of cancers if we had let these women get it. So what we have done as a society is that we have somehow cheated ourselves. So we've used half of the intelligence that God gave to us as human beings by excluding women. And so it's time, and this is why I say that feminism in the end is a justice movement. It's not about, it's not about fighting anybody, it's about justice. It's a justice movement. And so when we have full inclusion of women, we're bringing in more talent,